The street lights cast long shadows across Westwood Avenue as Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson's taxi pulled up to his red brick two-story home. It was 2:17 a.m. on a humid July morning, and the neighborhood was eerily quiet. After 15 months in Iraq, all he wanted was to surprise his wife, Rachel, and hold her in his arms again. He wasn't supposed to be home for another 3 weeks. The early return was his gift to her. Their 10th anniversary was just days away. In his duffel bag, alongside his combat fatigues and dog tags, lay a white gold necklace he'd ordered specially from Dubai. The cab driver, an elderly man named Harold, helped him with his bags. "Welcome home, soldier," Harold said, refusing the extra tip Marcus tried to give him. "Your family must be really happy to have you back." Marcus smiled, thinking of Rachel's face when she'd see him. "They don't know I'm coming. Wanted to surprise them." Harold nodded, got back in his cab, and drove off into the night. Marcus stood for a moment, looking at his house. Something felt off. There was a car he didn't recognize parked in front. A black Dodge Charger with tinted windows and custom rims. Probably one of the neighbors got a new ride, he thought, but a knot began forming in his stomach. The house was dark except for a faint glow from their bedroom window upstairs. The porch light was off, which was strange. Rachel always left it on at night. As he approached, he noticed other small details that seemed wrong. The front garden, which Rachel had always tended meticulously, looked overgrown. Empty beer bottles lined the porch railing. Using his key, Marcus quietly opened the front door. The living room smelled different. Unfamiliar cologne mixed with marijuana smoke. Their wedding photo, which had always sat on the entry table, was face down. Then he heard it, muffled sounds coming from upstairs. His military training kicked in automatically. Moving silently, he set down his bags and climbed the stairs, each step calculated and quiet. The sounds grew clearer. Rhythmic creaking, heavy breathing, a man's low grunt. The master bedroom door was closed but not fully latched. Yellow light spilled through the crack, along with the unmistakable sounds of sex. Marcus felt his world tilting sideways, but his body moved with the calm precision that had kept him alive in combat. He pushed the door open. The scene burned itself into his mind in fragments. Tangled sheets, brown skin against brown skin. His wife's legs wrapped around a stranger's waist, their wedding picture on the nightstand watching it all. Time seemed to stop. Nobody moved. Then Rachel screamed. The man, muscular with dreadlocks and a tribal tattoo across his back, rolled off and reached for something on the floor. In the yellow lamplight, metal glinted. Gun. Marcus's training took over. In Iraq, hesitation meant death. He crossed the room in 2 steps, caught the man's wrist before he could raise the weapon, and drove his other fist into the man's throat. The gun clattered to the floor. What happened next played out like a horrible dream. Rachel screaming, the man gasping for air but coming up swinging, fists connecting with flesh, rolling on the floor, the gun sliding under the bed, blood spraying across white walls. In the chaos, Marcus's hand found the gun. The man lunged. 2 shots rang out. Then silence. Rachel Johnson stood in front of her bathroom mirror, carefully applying her MAC Ruby Woo lipstick. 32, she still turned heads. Her Pilates kept her figure tight, and she took pride in her appearance. Today, she'd chosen a fitted red dress that hugged every curve. Her phone buzzed on the counter. A text from Derek. "Can't wait to see you tonight, baby." Marcus still not back for 3 more weeks. She typed back quickly, "All clear. Come by after 9. Rachel stared at her reflection, trying to quiet the guilt that gnawed at her stomach. She and Marcus had been high school sweethearts, married right after graduation. He joined the army to provide a better life for them, and she'd supported his decision. But the deployments got longer, the distance grew wider, and somewhere along the way she'd started feeling lonely. Derek Carter had walked into her life 6 months ago at the hair salon where she worked. He was everything Marcus wasn't: present, spontaneous, dangerous in an exciting way. What started as innocent flirting turned into drinks after work, then secret meetings, and finally into something she couldn't control. Her phone buzzed again. This time it was Marcus on FaceTime. "Hey, baby," he said, his face pixelated on the small screen. He looked tired, dust from the Iraqi desert still visible on his uniform. "Hey," she answered, forcing a smile. "How are you? Missing you like crazy. 3 more weeks feel like forever. But hey, our anniversary is coming up. I got something special planned." "Can't wait," she lied, her stomach churning. They talked for a few minutes about nothing important. She told him about work at the salon, carefully avoiding any mention of Derek, who'd become a regular customer just to see her. "I love you," Marcus said before hanging up. "Stay safe." "Love you too," she replied, the words tasting bitter in her mouth. At the salon that day, her coworker Tamika noticed her distraction. "Girl, you're playing with fire," Tamika warned while mixing hair dye. "Derek might be fine as hell, but he's got a record. And Marcus, that man loves you for real." I know, Rachel sighed, arranging supplies. "It just happened. And now I can't stop." "Can't stop is going to get somebody killed," Tamika muttered. "Mark my words." By evening, Rachel had pushed away all thoughts of consequences. She'd ordered Marcus's favorite takeout from Benny's Barbecue, letting the delivery driver think it was for her husband. She changed the sheets, lit scented candles, and poured 2 glasses of wine. At 9:15 p.m., Derek's black Dodge Charger pulled up. He entered using the key she'd given him last month, looking like Sin in dark jeans and a fitted black shirt that showed off his muscled arms. "Damn, baby," he said, pulling her close. "You trying to kill me in that dress?" They barely made it upstairs before clothes started coming off. Derek had brought weed and more wine. They smoked, drank, made love, talked, and made love again. Hours passed in a haze of pleasure and chemical courage. "Are you ever going to leave him?" Derek asked around midnight, tracing patterns on her bare skin. "It's complicated," she answered. "The house is in his name. My whole life is tied to his. I got money," Derek said. "Been doing good with my business." They both knew his business wasn't entirely legal. "Just give me time," she said, kissing him to stop further questions. Neither of them heard the taxi pull up outside. Neither noticed the front door quietly opening. They were lost in each other, music playing low on the Bluetooth speaker, when the bedroom door swung open and their world exploded. Blood pooled on the hardwood floor, seeping into the cracks between the boards. 2 bodies lay motionless. Derek face down, 2 bullet holes in his chest. Rachel slumped against the wall, caught by a stray round that had passed through Derek and into her left shoulder. Marcus stood in the center of the room, the gun still warm in his hand. His military training had taken over during the fight, but now the soldier was fading, leaving just a man staring at the ruins of his life. He checked Derek first, no pulse. Then he moved to Rachel, who was conscious but going into shock. "Marcus," she whispered, blood staining her red dress darker. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." His combat medic training kicked in. He grabbed towels from the bathroom, applied pressure to her wound. "Don't talk. Help is coming." But he hadn't called anyone yet. His phone was still in his duffel bag downstairs. The neighbors must have heard the shots. Someone would call 911. Or maybe not. In this part of Detroit, people learned to mind their business when they heard gunfire. As if reading his thoughts, police sirens wailed in the distance, growing closer. "I didn't mean—" Rachel tried to speak again. "Shut up," Marcus said quietly. "Just shut up." The sirens stopped outside. Car doors slammed. Flashlight beams swept across the windows. "Detroit police, open up." Marcus set the gun down carefully and walked downstairs, hands raised. He opened the front door to find 4 officers with weapons drawn. "Don't move. Hands where we can see them." "I'm Staff Sergeant Marcus Johnson," he said calmly. "I'm the homeowner. There are 2 people injured upstairs. 1 DOA. My wife needs medical attention." They cuffed him anyway, standard procedure. As they led him to a squad car, neighbors emerged from their homes, filming with phones. Mrs. Thompson from next door stood on her porch in a nightgown, shaking her head sadly. "That poor boy," she muttered. Fought for his country just to come home to this mess. The next hours passed in a blur. The detective interviewing Marcus at the station was a middle-aged black man named Harris. "Walk me through it again," Detective Harris said. Recording device on the table between them. Marcus told it straight. The early return, the strange car, the sounds upstairs, the gun under the bed, self-defense. His court-appointed lawyer, Angela Carter, insisted. The deceased had a weapon and a criminal record. "My client is a decorated combat veteran who found armed intruders in his home." "One intruder," Detective Harris corrected. "The other victim was his wife, who was participating in a home invasion by letting her lover in." "The shooting was justified," Carter argued. At Detroit General, Rachel underwent surgery to remove the bullet. Her parents arrived, her mother crying, her father stone-faced. They'd never approved of Marcus, thought their daughter could do better than a soldier. Now they sat in the waiting room, avoiding the news crews gathering outside. By morning, the story was everywhere. Soldier catches wife with lover, deadly shooting on West Side, Iraq vet guns down wife's paramour in marriage bed, tragic homecoming, war hero finds betrayal, blood. Social media exploded with opinions. He served his country while she served everybody else. Hashtag Team Marcus. 2 people shot over cheating? He needs to be put in jail. This is why you don't mess with military men's wives. But none of it reached Marcus in his holding cell. He sat motionless, staring at the wall, seeing only the bedroom scene playing over and over in his mind, wondering when exactly his life had derailed. Was it during his last deployment? Earlier? Had the signs been there all along? Detective Harris sat at his desk in Area Central, surrounded by photos from the crime scene. The case seemed straightforward at first, a classic crime of passion. But something wasn't adding up. He picked up Derek Carter's rap sheet. Drug possession, assault, suspected ties to the East Side Boys gang. But nothing in the past 5 years. His legitimate business, a chain of car washes, was doing well. The gun found at the scene was legally registered to him. "Detective," Officer Jenkins interrupted his thoughts. "You need to see this." She handed him a transcript of Rachel Johnson's phone records. Hundreds of texts between her and Derek, going back 8 months. But there was something else, messages to a burner phone discussing life insurance policies and deployment schedules. "There's more," Jenkins said. "Remember that break-in attempt at the Johnson house 4 months ago? Nothing stolen. Case went cold. Happened right after Sergeant Johnson increased his SGLI to $1 million. Harris leaned back, connecting dots. "You thinking this wasn't just an affair? Maybe they were planning something bigger, waiting for him to deploy again." At Detroit General, Rachel Johnson was recovering from surgery. 2 uniformed officers stood guard outside her room. Detective Harris found her parents still there, Carl and Diane Mitchell, both retired Detroit public school teachers. "Mrs. Johnson," Harris said, entering the room. "We need to talk." Rachel looked small in the hospital bed, her left arm immobilized. "I already told the other officers what happened." "You told them about the affair," Harris said. "But let's talk about the insurance policy and those interesting texts about your husband's deployment schedule." The color drained from her face. Meanwhile, at Wayne County Jail, Marcus received his first visitor, David Johnson, his younger brother and a Detroit bus driver. "Man, what the hell?" David said through the visiting room glass. "I had to hear about this on the news. How's Mama taking it?" "How you think?" Marcus asked. "She's at church right now praying. Pastor's organizing support for your defense. Tell her not to bother." "I did what I did." David leaned closer to the glass. "Listen, bro, people out here supporting you. Even Rachel's friends from the salon talking about how she did you dirty. Your army buddies started a legal defense fund. This ain't over." But Marcus barely seemed to hear him. "You know what's crazy? When I was in Iraq, every night I dreamed of coming home to her. Even when mortars were falling, knowing she was here kept me going. Now I wish I'd never come back." Back at Area Central, Detective Harris was building a different picture. Bank records showed large cash deposits to Rachel's personal account. Derek's phone revealed deleted messages about taking care of the soldier problem. They were planning to kill him, Harris told his partner, probably during his next deployment, make it look like a combat death or an accident. The affair got sloppy, but the real plan was the insurance money. So what now? Jenkins asked. Johnson still killed 2 people. 1 person, Harris corrected. Rachel's alive, and once she's stable, we're charging her with conspiracy to commit murder. The news hit Detroit's west side like a bomb. At Derek's car wash, workers gathered to mourn their boss. Many hadn't known about his relationship with Rachel, much less any murder plot. At the salon where Rachel worked, opinions were divided. Some defended her, pointing to Marcus's long absences. Others, like Tamika, felt betrayed. She sat right there, Tamika told reporters, pointing to Rachel's empty styling station, talking about how much she missed Marcus, how proud she was of him serving. Meanwhile, she's plotting with her side dude to kill him. That's cold. Social media narratives shifted from victim to villain. Wife and soldier love triangle allegedly planned murder. West Side shooting reveals deadly insurance scam. War hero thwarted own murder by coming home early. The summer heatwave gripped Detroit as new details emerged. Detective Harris stood before a room of reporters at DPD headquarters, laying out the conspiracy they'd uncovered. What initially appeared to be a tragic domestic incident was actually part of a larger criminal conspiracy, he explained. Evidence suggests Mrs. Johnson and Mr. Carter had been planning the death of Sergeant Johnson for financial gain. Security camera footage from the car wash showed Rachel and Derek meeting late at night. Bank records revealed wire transfers to offshore accounts. A laptop found in Derek's car contained research on untraceable poisons and accidents that could look natural in a war zone. At Detroit General, Rachel finally broke down under questioning. "It wasn't supposed to be like this," she sobbed to Detective Harris. "Derek said it would be clean, quick. Marcus wouldn't suffer. The insurance money would set us up for life." "So you were going to have your husband killed for money?" Harris asked, recording the confession. "You don't understand," Rachel said. "Those deployments changed him. He'd wake up screaming, having flashbacks. Sometimes he didn't recognize me. I was scared of him. Derek promised to protect me. But her story didn't match the evidence. Marcus's Army records showed no history of violent incidents. His psychological evaluations were clean. Neighbors described him as quiet, respectful. At the salon, Tamika provided another perspective. "Rachel changed when she met Derek," she told investigators. "Started wearing expensive stuff, talking about needing more excitement. One time I heard them arguing about timing. She wanted to wait. He was pushing for something to happen sooner." The investigation revealed more players. Derek's cousin worked at an insurance company and had helped fast-track Marcus's policy changes. A former cellmate of Derek's was arrested for attempting to purchase untraceable weapons as part of the plot. Meanwhile, Marcus remained largely silent in jail. His attorney, Angela Carter, built a strong self-defense case. "My client, a decorated combat veteran, returned home to find armed intruders," she repeated to the media. "He acted to protect himself in his own home. The fact that these intruders were plotting his murder only strengthens our case." The community rallied around Marcus. Local veterans groups organized protests outside the courthouse. His church collected funds for his defense. Even Rachel's parents, learning of the murder plot, publicly supported their son-in-law. "We failed to see what our daughter had become," Carl Mitchell told reporters outside the hospital. "Marcus served his country with honor while she betrayed everything. Her vows, her family, basic human decency." The case took another turn when investigators found videos on Derek's phone. He'd recorded conversations with Rachel, apparently as insurance. In one video, filmed in their bedroom 2 months earlier, they discussed methods. "Rachel, it has to look natural. Combat zone. Anything could happen." Derek, "My connection says he can make it look like friendly fire. Costs extra, but it's untraceable." Rachel, "Whatever it takes. I can't spend another year pretending to be the proud military wife." The evidence was damning. The Wayne County Prosecutor's Office charged Rachel with conspiracy to commit first-degree murder, solicitation of murder, and insurance fraud. Several of Derek's associates faced related charges. Marcus's case moved toward a rapid resolution. Given the circumstances and evidence of the murder plot, prosecutors agreed to reduce the charges to voluntary manslaughter. The death of Derek Carter, while tragic, occurred during the commission of a felony in which he was a willing participant, the prosecutor announced. Mr. Johnson's actions, while extreme, were influenced by reasonable fear for his life. The Wayne County Criminal Courthouse buzzed with tension as Rachel Johnson's preliminary hearing began. She appeared in a wheelchair, her left arm still in a sling, wearing county-issued beige scrubs instead of her usual designer clothes. Marcus sat in the gallery, flanked by his brother David and their mother, Gloria Johnson, a retired postal worker who'd barely missed a day of court. He'd been released on electronic monitoring, the prosecutor citing his military service and cooperation. Assistant Prosecutor Lisa Martinez laid out the government's case. Your Honor, the evidence will show that the defendant, along with her deceased co-conspirator, engaged in a calculated plot to murder her husband for financial gain. This wasn't a simple affair gone wrong. This was a premeditated conspiracy to kill a United States soldier. The evidence was overwhelming. Investigators had recovered deleted emails discussing various murder scenarios. One particularly damning message from Rachel to Derek read, "Next deployment is in September. That's our window. After that, we'll be set for life." Financial records showed Rachel had already spent some of Marcus's combat pay on gifts for Derek, including the custom rims on his Charger. She'd also taken out additional credit cards in Marcus's name while he was deployed. Detective Harris testified about the sophisticated nature of the plot. They had multiple plans in place. Plan A was to arrange an accident during deployment. Plan B involved hired contractors in Iraq. They even researched ways to make it look like insurgent activity. During cross-examination, Rachel's public defender tried to paint her as a victim of Derek's manipulation. But the recorded conversations told a different story. In one video, Rachel was clearly the one pushing for action. "We need to stop talking and make this happen. I'm tired of playing wife every time he FaceTimes. Tired of listening to him talk about our future when I want a future with you." The testimony that hit hardest came from Tamika, Rachel's former friend from the salon. "She changed completely," Tamika said. "Started taking long lunches with Derek, coming back with expensive gifts. One time, she laughed about Marcus sending her extra money for their anniversary. Said he was basically funding their dates." During a break in proceedings, Gloria Johnson spoke quietly to her son. "Baby, I know this hurts, but God got you through war for a reason. He brought you home early for a reason." Marcus just nodded, his face impassive. The only time he showed emotion was during playback of the surveillance footage from his house cameras. He'd installed them himself for Rachel's protection while he was away. The irony wasn't lost on anyone. The footage showed Rachel and Derek entering the house multiple times over months, often staying overnight. More damaging were their conversations on the back porch, smoking weed and casually discussing murder. "Rachel, it's too risky here. Has to be overseas." "Derek, my guy says Iraq's perfect. Things go wrong there all the time." "Rachel, just make sure it's after the policy kicks in, and make it clean. He deserves that much at least." In the courtroom, Rachel broke down during this playback, sobbing loudly until the judge ordered a recess. Her parents, sitting far from Marcus's family, left the courtroom in tears. The preliminary hearing concluded with Rachel being held without bail. The judge cited the severity of the charges and called the evidence disturbing and substantial. Meanwhile, Marcus's case moved toward resolution. Given the circumstances, prosecutors offered a plea deal: plead guilty to involuntary manslaughter, receive a sentence of probation with no additional jail time. His attorney advised accepting the deal, but Marcus seemed hesitant. "If I take it, I'm admitting I did something wrong. A man comes into my house with a gun, plotting to kill me, and I'm supposed to apologize. The plea hearing for Marcus Johnson took place on a rainy Tuesday morning. The courtroom was packed. Veterans in uniform, church members, family, media, even some of Rachel's former salon clients came to support him. Judge Miranda Chun addressed Marcus directly. "Sergeant Johnson, before accepting your plea, I want to ensure you understand its terms. While the court recognizes the extraordinary circumstances of this case, taking a life remains a serious matter." Marcus stood straight, military bearing evident. "Yes, Your Honor. I understand." The plea agreement was read into the record. Involuntary manslaughter, 5 years probation, mandatory counseling, no contact with Rachel Johnson or Derek Carter's family. Before accepting the plea, Judge Chun made an unusual statement. The court notes that while the defendant's actions resulted in death, they occurred in response to what evidence shows was an ongoing criminal conspiracy against his life. His service to this country, clean record, and the unique circumstances warrant judicial mercy. Marcus was fingerprinted one final time and released. Outside the courthouse, reporters shouted questions. "Sergeant Johnson, do you regret coming home early? Any words for your wife? Will you return to active duty?" He ignored them all, walking to his mother's car with his family forming a protective circle around him. 2 weeks later, Rachel's trial began. She'd rejected all plea offers despite her attorney's advice. The evidence mounted daily, text messages showing her coaching Derek on Marcus's military schedule, recordings of calls to offshore banks about moving money, testimony from Derek's cousin about helping fake insurance documents, security footage of them meeting with known hitmen. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. "Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about infidelity. This isn't about a marriage gone wrong. This is about greed. While Sergeant Johnson risked his life serving our country, his wife plotted his death. She watched him go to war but planned to ensure he'd never come home." The jury deliberated for just 4 hours. Verdict: guilty on all counts. Judge Chun, presiding over this case as well, showed no mercy at sentencing. "Mrs. Johnson, you betrayed not just your marriage vows but basic human decency. You plotted to murder a man who served his country honorably, who trusted and provided for you. The court sentences you to 25 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections." Rachel's sobs echoed through the courtroom as she was led away. Her parents left without speaking to anyone. The aftermath rippled through Detroit's west side. The salon closed temporarily, then reopened under new management. Tamika started her own shop, naming it Loyalty First. Derek's car wash empire was sold off to pay legal settlements. His children from a previous relationship received most of the proceeds. Marcus resigned from the Army, accepting a medical discharge with full benefits. He started counseling at the VA and eventually began speaking to veterans groups about trauma and betrayal. The house where it happened sold quickly below market value. The new owners gutted the master bedroom, replacing the blood-stained floors. 1 year later, Marcus sat in his new apartment, looking at divorce papers. His hand hesitated over the signature line as memories flooded back. Their high school prom, their wedding day, all the homecomings and farewells. His phone buzzed, a text from his VA counselor. "Group meets at 7. You coming?" He signed the papers. Outside, Detroit continued its endless cycle of renewal. New buildings rose. Old ones fell. People loved, betrayed, healed, moved on. But in certain quiet moments, in the spaces between heartbeats, the echoes remained. Of gunshots on a summer night. Of trust shattered like glass. Of a soldier who came home too early and a wife who plotted too late.